I'm gonna be honest, I feel like I may have been a little bit too negative in my recent videos, because the impression that I'm giving off in my videos, especially in my camping video, my season video, and in my 2021 video, is that I'm just a negative Nancy that will never be pleased no matter how much Bedemo tries. But contrary to popular belief, that's not really how I operate. I'm not going to be negative towards things for the sake of being negative, because in reality, I just appreciate good games for being good games, and that's how I will always think and operate. And for that reason is why I don't really hold that much of a disdain towards Bedemo or Jailbreak that much anymore. Yes, I can be sick about FOMO, yes, I can be sick about trading, yes, I can be sick about whatever gameplay decision they want to do, but we don't have time travel yet, so we can't really do anything about those issues. So overall, I just wish that Bedemo would just handle the game better, but they have no intention of doing so whatsoever, and there's really nothing we can do about that nowadays. Yeah, so what's funny about that statement is that I completely lied to you. There actually is something we can do about these problems, and that is through Jailbreak-like games. Yeah, so it turns out Jailbreak was so successful that it basically created an entire subgenre of video games on the Roblox platform. And yeah, I know that Jailbreak is a part of the prison genre, but I personally think that it quickly broke out of that just because of the things that they decided to innovate upon beyond just what prison games were back then. Although there will be some exceptions in this video, I'm only going to be talking about games that have the core Jailbreak gameplay style to them. Games where you very much have a choice between playing as a criminal and a police officer, and you have robberies as a criminal, and you can arrest criminals as a police officer, and you have an open world to explore with a bunch of vehicles and cool mechanics. I think everyone knows what a Jailbreak-like game is like, so I don't need to go in depth as to what that is, so why don't we go into our first Jailbreak-like game, and probably the only really popular one on this list, which is of course Mad City. I think if you're a fan of Jailbreak, you at least know of or are a fan of Mad City too, because really Mad City is the only other prison game on Roblox that has a similar legacy to Jailbreak. And I've already gone into much further detail as to why I don't really like Mad City. I'd even say I hate Mad City. I find no creative value or any creativity in Mad City whatsoever. You can tell in my 2019 video that, yeah, this game was made for the sole purpose of making profit and gaining fame off of Jailbreak success, and I don't like that. I do not like that one bit. It only gets worse as time progresses because you see Mad City copy Jailbreak more and more and more, and then eventually they just start doing some weird shit by copying Fortnite, which is very weird because Jailbreak also loves copying Fortnite at every turn. So now Mad City is copying Jailbreak in a new way by copying Fortnite of all things, which means that Mad City has essentially entered a state of copycat nirvana. They've now entered a third dimension of being derivative, which is super, like, fucking stupid, but also kind of impressive. And if you don't know what I mean by Mad City copying Fortnite, just look at the end of their little shitty live event that they had literally a month after Jailbreak had their own live event, where they literally do the black hole thing. You know, the fucking Fortnite end black hole, they literally do that. In fact, they've said on multiple occasions that yes, they were inspired by Fortnite, but I don't think inspired means just take the thing from the thing. Even before that, they added an entire mech suit to the game, which was literally the Brute from Fortnite Season X. You know, that shitty fucking overpowered vehicle from Fortnite Season X? Yeah, that one. It literally controlled the same way and it had the same abilities. It was the same fucking thing. It's just very, very, very hard to find any semblance of appreciation for Mad City whatsoever, and I just can't stand it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't these little teeny tiny things that are worth talking about and are worth appreciating. It's not very well documented when Mad City actually came out, but I'd say it came out around the beginning of 2019, and especially during that time, Jailbreak was very much doing its own thing. The game very much felt like Jailbreak during that time. Jailbreak was creatively consistent, while Mad City, on the other hand, decided to do their own thing and to be creatively very weird. And I mean that in a very good way. When Mad City isn't being super derivative and copying Jailbreak and other games at every turn, their creative mind is very, very interesting. Because ever since 2019, it would take years for us to get a full boss fight in Jailbreak, but Mad City actually had very many boss fights during the game's lifespan. Like, the first boss fight was involved with the first April Fool's event, where you had to fight this giant chicken at the center of the city named Cluckles, and once you actually beat him, you were rewarded with the Banshee vehicle, which was like a really good flying car. And then there was this other one where you had to fight a mask from fucking Crash Bandicoot, and then there was this other one where Cluckles returned, and then there was this other one with Atlantis where you had to fight a starfish. It's just these kinds of things that make Mad City actually creatively distinct from Jailbreak. Like, these things are something you would never see in Jailbreak whatsoever. As for the boss fights themselves, I never felt compelled to do any of them. I tried doing the Mech Cluckles boss fight, but once I actually did that, I realized that, oh wow, these are kind of terrible. I don't want to do these, so I didn't do it. But other than like the boss fights and the events, the season system that they had admittedly was, again, taken from Fortnite, but they decided to take one of the good things from Fortnite and implement a really good level progression system, which was better than what Jailbreak had at the time. See, I'm not so negative. There are things in Mad City that are worth praising in my opinion. I'm not a negative Nancy. And if you're not convinced yet, then buckle up, because we haven't even gone to Mad City Chapter 2, which is like a million times better than Mad City Chapter 1 could ever dream of being. Because for one, the robberies are like really good, and not just really good, like they're really, really good. Think about how in Jailbreak you have the Crown Jewel, which is like the most in-depth robbery in the game because of just the sheer amount of things you have to do to actually rob the location. Now think about that, and imagine if that was how all of the robberies worked and they were somehow even better. That is Mad City Chapter 2 for you. Nearly all of the robberies are absolutely fantastic. For example, let's just compare how the bank worked from Chapter 1 to Chapter 2, because in Chapter 1, the bank was pretty ass, if I'm gonna be honest, because the only thing you needed to do was hack this little computer to open up the vault and get the money and quickly get out. Pretty bare bones, if I'm gonna be honest. While as Chapter 2 is much more involved, as you need to search through levers on the second floor to open up the first door to the vault. But that's not the only thing you need to do. You need to go into this vent so you can access another computer to hack into the vault and open it. And hacking this time, however, is much more involved, as it is no longer just holding E. It is an actual quick time event, which requires precision and skill, which I like. And then you go into the vault and collect your money manually, much like the Crown Jewel in Jailbreak, and then you quickly get out and return to your criminal base and get your money. See, how's that? That's a pretty involved robbery compared to beforehand, where most of the time you're just like standing around waiting for things to happen. But here, you're actually doing a lot of things to actually rob the money from the place, and I think it's pretty good. Do y'all agree? Like, I'd say it's really, really good. Same thing with the jewelry store, because at least at first, you'd expect the jewelry store to be mostly unchanged, but once you go more into it, you realize that it is a whole nother beast. Once you actually collect your jewels, you need to go into the back of the jewelry store and drop off your bag of jewels onto this conveyor belt. And then you go through this conveyor belt obstacle course with a bunch of lava and pistons and levers, and it's pretty weird admittedly for a jewelry store, but I think it's pretty cool for what they're going for. And once you're done with the obby, you are met with a van that you need to put your bag of jewels into and drive to a designated location for you to earn your money. And in my opinion, this is just fucking sick. Having the game make you use the jewelry store van, a very shitty vehicle to actually go to the location, rather than just being able to use any vehicle you want, I think that is pretty damn cool. I say this about very few robberies that are in prison games in Roblox, but holy shit, I feel like I'm in an action movie. It's like I'm using the jewelry store van as a disguise to throw off cops. Like, it's just so cool. And the same thing goes with every other robbery in the game. They are just so much fun to do, and they're so much refreshing than the monotonous robberies we have today in Jailbreak, which is just so good in my opinion. Props to Swifty Studios. I never expected them to exceed my expectations like this, but here we are. I should say that the vehicles did get a substantial upgrade too, now that they're actually, like, usable instead of fucking broken like before. Because beforehand, cars were just super not fun to use. They didn't abide by physics whatsoever, which made them really, really janky and clunky, and they were just a slog to use. But here they actually have suspension and physics to them, which I really do appreciate. And I also gotta commend the amount of work they put into vehicle customization too, because vehicle wraps and textures actually look good, dare I say great, compared to Chapter 1, where they looked fucking awful. And another tiny thing I like about Chapter 2 is the addition of radio, specifically radio stations, because this time we actually have real immersive radio stations, which is like really cool, and I don't think I've seen any other Roblox game do this kind of thing. But they actually have like radio hosts that are voice acted, and each radio station is kind of associated with a different kind of music genre. It's really cool. I really like using this when I'm driving in the game. Now, with all of that being said, I'm not entirely sure if my judgment on Chapter 2 is completely valid now, because those are really just my first impressions when I first played Chapter 2 when it came out. Because playing the game nowadays, it's so much different, and honestly, it's kind of worse. Specifically in the bank and jewelry store, for some reason, they've kind of regressed to how the robberies were in Chapter 1, which I have no idea why they did this. The revamped bank and jewelry store are some of the most fun robberies in the game, and for some reason, they just regressed them back to how they were, and I have no idea why they did this. It seems so backwards. And also, the map size since Chapter 2's release has been cut down tremendously, and it's not even just in the geography. Multiple locations on the map have been sized down a lot. You could probably assume that this was to optimize the game big time, because admittedly, if they were to update the game further and add more stuff on the map, your computer would probably turn into a goddamn bomb. And admittedly, when Chapter 2 did come out, the game was fairly laggy, so I do understand why they did this, but I gotta be real, when Chapter 2 came out, I loved the map. I love how expansive it was, and just the overall vibe from it. I absolutely adored it. Nowadays, when I play Mad City, I just kinda hate to see the map be somewhat neutered. Makes me wish that there was some middle ground that can be met, but I do understand why they did this. And especially nowadays, in terms of overall public enthusiasm, Mad City is a dead game. I'm pretty sure very few people actually care about Mad City now. In terms of player count, it is very much dwindling away. I'm pretty sure the developers do not care for the game anymore. They're working on other stuff now. And so if this is the game the developers are leaving behind, if this is what they are calling the finished product of Mad City, I can't hate it. The developers have done a decent job of improving the game since Chapter 1, and I honestly don't really hate it anymore. But actually, I completely lied to you. They have AI art in the game, and they use AI art thumbnails, so fuck you, Swifty Studios, you can kiss my ass. And that was Mad City. Started off being complete dog shit, and eventually turned into something that I wish Jailbreak would take notes from. So how about we move on to the next Jailbreak-like game, which is probably a game that a lot of you might have forgotten about if you've heard of it, and that would be Prison Showdown. Who here remembers Prison Showdown? Probably none of you. The release for this game was pretty interesting in my opinion, because everyone had this layer of curiosity around this game, because everyone was making reviews for the game rather than making normal like gameplay videos about it, and everyone was so skeptical about it for some reason. And honestly, I can't really blame them, because this game is very, very weird. Because, you know Murder Mystery 2? Now, how about it had a baby with Jailbreak? That's what Prison Showdown is, and I'm not entirely sure if it actually works or not, because personally, I have zero Prison Showdown experience pretty much at all. I did not play the game that much during its heyday, and nowadays, the game is as dead as Julius Caesar, so I can't even get a feel of how the game was back then. All I can really do is just observe how the game was when it released, and I just gotta say, this game is so fucking weird, man. Because essentially how this game worked and what made it stand out was that as a criminal, you do not have access to regular gun combat. The only thing you have at your disposal to attack an enemy is through knives. And as a cop, the only thing you have are handcuffs and a revolver at your disposal. And so this is especially where the Murder Mystery 2 influence comes in, because criminals basically have the murderer gameplay from that game, and of course cops have the sheriff gameplay from MM2. And so what happens when you take these gameplay styles from a round-based murder mystery party game and put them inside of an open-world cops and robbers action game, you're left with something that I'm not really sure works. Now, with that being said, it's not like this game has nothing going for it, because there are cool things in this game. First off, there is kind of a progression leveling system in this game through what's in this witch's hut. Basically, what you need to do is upgrade your weapons gradually, whether it be upgrading your knife with different abilities and attributes, or obtaining different kinds of weapons as a police officer. And of course, as a criminal, you get money by doing robberies, which there's actually a lot of robberies in this game. And as a cop, you have to get money by arresting criminals and getting their bounties and whatnot. And you know, the Jailbreak gameplay is still there, but the modifications that they make to it to make it seem more original, I honestly don't know how that works. And honestly, I can't even tell you if it works, because I can't, like, play it. There's only, like, a handful of vehicles that are worth buying, and even then, there aren't even that many vehicles in the game to begin with. And the vehicle physics, like the chassis itself, isn't really that good anyway. I mean, it's better than Mad City, but that's a really low bar. I do have to say that the aesthetics of the game are decently pleasant to look at. It is much more visually distinct from Jailbreak than Mad City could do. I'd like to think that if Murder Mystery 2 did have an open world, this is what it would look like. Like, different locales on the map would be their own Murder Mystery 2 maps. But even then, some of the UI elements are super derivative of Jailbreak and Murder Mystery 2 to a very blatant degree. I'm just in a position where I don't really know how to feel about this game, because I pretty much have zero strong feelings about it. I think for the time for which the game was released, I think it was a better game than Mad City, but it didn't really have the highs that Jailbreak had. I don't know, I just think that this is another one of those prison games that just came and went and unfortunately could not match the legacy of other Roblox games. And while I do really like the idea of mashing Murder Mystery 2 and Jailbreak together to create something really cool and unique, I can acknowledge that this whole gameplay style is a gimmick. Really, the only reason why I find any kind of appreciation for this game is because it did what Mad City couldn't and make something actually unique by using creative ideas. But other than that, in practice, the whole, like, criminal versus cop gameplay styles being two sides of, like, Murder Mystery 2 is a gimmick. I can't acknowledge it as anything else. The game would just be more fun if both teams had access to regular gun-to-gun combat, but this whole thing, this gimmick, is holding it back so much. But other than that, I really don't know what else to say about Prison Showdown other than that it's an unoriginal, forgotten game. Which really sucks because I think if the developers just worked on it more and it had much more originality going for it and much more intrigue, I think it could be something really special, but nowadays people don't care about it. But if I'm gonna be honest, I'm not even that sure if I want a Prison Showdown to exist and have its place on the Roblox platform, because I kinda don't want this kind of gameplay style to be oversaturated on Roblox that much. Like, I'm sure a lot of people thought that Prison Showdown was gonna be like the third big prison game alongside Mad City and Jailbreak, but I kinda don't want this kind of gameplay over dominating the Roblox platform, so can we just have it stay in its own lane, please and thank you? But yeah, that's Prison Showdown for you, except not really, because I can't really play the game now to get a sound judgment of things. So with that being said, let's move on to the next Jailbreak-like on our hands, because as with Prison Showdown, it's probably a game that some people remember, but most people are probably going to be asking what it is. This one, however, no one is going to know. I'm going to be thoroughly surprised if someone in the comments says they actually remember this game. And the game in question is Wanted. What the fuck is a Wanted? Boy howdy, let me tell you about Wanted, because this game has a special place in my heart. Because at first glance, you look at this game, you move around, you shoot guns, and you realize that, wait a minute, this is not a Jailbreak-like. This is Grand Theft Auto. Everything from the weapons, to the menus, to the vehicles, it's very much inspired by GTA in a lot of ways, but it does have its Jailbreak DNA in it. It's basically if Jailbreak had a baby with GTA 5, which a lot of people like to say that Jailbreak is a ripoff of GTA 5, but I think this game very much shows that that's not the case. Jailbreak is very capable of being much more like GTA in a lot of ways. It's just that Jailbreak is way more distinct from GTA than a lot of people realize. Well, you're probably thinking, what do you actually do in Wanted? What makes this game so special? Why does it seem like this game was made up on the spot out of nowhere? Well, at first you have a choice of either being a part of the Mafia or being an enforcer. As a member of the Mafia, it's just kind of what you expect from this type of Jailbreak criminal gameplay. You rob stores, get money, get better cars, get better weapons, etc, etc. And as an enforcer, you can hunt down criminals to get their bounties and make money that way, but of course, since this game is deader than dead, you are unable to do that. And yeah, on the surface, it may seem like this is just yet another uninspired Jailbreak copy, but there is much more below the surface. Because the first major gameplay difference between this and Jailbreak is that, at least from my experience, I don't think there's a prison in the game. When you're defeated by an enforcer as a Mafia member, you're not sent to any kind of facility as kind of a timeout for your time playing the game, which is honestly kind of refreshing. You're just kind of plopped back into the main game. And I very much appreciate that kind of gameplay decision. Because as with Jailbreak, for what the prison is in that game now, I think it's fine, but something I really don't like is the fact that the prison kind of halts you in your tracks from playing the actual game, which honestly I really don't like. Because I don't know if it's just me, but I vastly prefer games where I am always engaged and I'm always playing the actual video game at all times. And the fact that right after you're arrested you get a 20-second timeout from actually doing anything the game offers, so it just really breaks the pace, and Wanted over here doesn't actually do that, which I really like. And another thing that is very different from Jailbreak are the robberies themselves, because unlike Jailbreak, where those robberies are very fast-paced and you do them in a quick amount of time and there's a lot of things to do and they're fairly engaging, these are very methodical and slow, very much like GTA heists in my opinion. But the actual gameplay that is present within the heists themselves isn't really that impressive in my opinion, because at least when you're starting out, you only have access to like 2 main robberies, which are the jewelry store and the treasury. Because with the treasury, it's a little more involved. You have to crawl through these like vaults and get the money through the little money printer thing that they have. And the jewelry store is pretty much nothing. You get the jewels from each floor and you quickly get out of there. Very nothing. Yeah, the big ways to make money in this game aren't really the most fun things to do. I assume the game is much more fun when you have actual enforcers attacking you as a mafia member. But I did not mention one other main robbery in the game, and that is the bank, because it is a very special occasion. Because with literally every other Jailbreak-like game out there, the bank is just kind of associated with robberies, so it's kind of like the main robbery in those games. But here, it is very different because once you start out, you actually can't even rob the bank. Because beforehand, you need to actually make enough money to buy TNT to actually open up the vault. Which on the surface, I don't think it's a bad gameplay decision. It kind of makes the bank this kind of penultimate robbery that you get on a really high level. Until you realize that the price for TNT is $1.2 million. What the fuck? Yeah, hell no, I'm not grinding for that. No, I'm not doing that. And speaking of the prices for weapons, some of these are completely outrageous. Like, you need millions upon millions of dollars just to get a lot of the good weapons in the game. And I don't think any of the cash payouts in this game were that good to warrant these absurd prices, so yeah, these kind of alienate a lot of players because who is gonna grind for these? And especially as of now, the game is so buggy that it's really not worth playing. I'd only recommend this game to players that are really curious to see what Wanted was about. So yeah, in the present day, this game is dead and broken and not worth playing. But even then, I don't think any of that invalidates any of the creativity put into this game, because there are still a lot of things that I find really cool in this game. Like, for example, beyond just the main typical robberies in the game, there's also a couple mini stores that you can also rob. Like, you can rob the pizzeria, you can rob the local Apple store, you can rob the ATMs out of the bank, and most funny out of all of them, there are civilians walking around on the map, and you can just straight up murder them and just take all of their money. And this is where the GTA 5 influence really comes in, and I just live for things like this. This is absolutely hilarious. But not only that, this game was surprisingly monetized during its launch, and it's not just in that, oh, it had these shitty microtransactions and moneymakers and whatnot. It actually had a full-fledged subscription service, which I find really interesting because especially nowadays, games have their own subscription services built into Roblox itself. But this one, if I'm not mistaken, is probably one of the first subscription services to be implemented into a Roblox game ever, which I find really interesting. And in terms of this premium subscription itself, you'll probably just assume that, oh, it just gives you extra cash and you'll get a custom status with it. Not really anything interesting, but it's actually kind of sick. Because not only do you get double cash payouts and access to the in-game radio, you get access to a whole nother team called the Mercenary Team, which is essentially just a fusion of the Enforcer and the Mafia team, in that you have access to all of the robberies and be able to collect criminal bounties, which I think is kind of cool. At least on paper, it's cool. I wouldn't know how cool it is in practice because you can't really play the game now because it's dead. But it's just these neat little things that I feel makes this game stand out in a very unique way. I really like things like this. I guess other things to note is that your money back in this game works very different than what Jailbreak and Mad City has, where your bounty is basically your money bag, and once you lose your wanted level, that's when you actually earn your money. Which, I just gotta say, That is not a half bad idea, having your bounty be your money bag and having it kind of be a risk-reward system in the game, and you have to constantly avoid cops to actually keep your money you get from heists, I think is pretty cool. Dare I say, Jailbreak should have a system similar to it. I just gotta say, it's a better money bag system than Jailbreak. Fight me all you want. I think in a gameplay sense, this is fantastic. And I guess one other thing to note is that this game does have friendly fire, which means that if you and your friend are on the same team, like if you're on the Mafia team, you can just straight up kill each other, which I'm not really a huge fan of. That really kind of throws away the idea of teams. But I guess it does kind of go with the idea they have on, like, the tagline they have for the Mafia team of kind of controlling territory on the map as you battle against each other, which I guess is kind of cool. It would just be better if this idea was actually implemented into the gameplay of, like, controlling territory and stuff like that. So yeah, that's Wanted for you. Honestly, with how broken and dead the game is and how non-functional it is, it's got some ideas that I would love to see fully realized in, like, an actual Jailbreak-like game. Hell, I'd love to see these ideas in Jailbreak itself. And in terms of, like, performance in its release, I honestly remember this game being one of the first Jailbreak-inspired games on Roblox. Hell, I'd say that it came before Mad City, which, since Mad City is very derivative in its aesthetic and design, it makes Wanted a whole lot better because it is actually very, very distinct from Jailbreak. And it did have a very good release. A lot of YouTubers were playing the game back then, saying it would be the next Jailbreak. But then I guess the developers just stopped caring about the game, and nowadays they've worked on things like... Oh. Yeah, it kind of sucks because Wanted 2 was actually in development for quite a while. It just never got finished, and there is some footage of it out there, but goddamn, the game is so dead now, and it's just kind of unfortunate that this wonderful game, in my opinion, had to suffer its fate, but yeah, it is what it is. Wanted is a very special case, in my opinion, because it's one of those games that had a ton of potential, and what was realized was very, very good, in my opinion. It just never went anywhere, and nowadays the game is barely even playable, so yeah, for those who remember it, let me know what your thoughts on the game is, because in my opinion, I think it is truly something special. Anyway, enough about talking about games that are completely dead in the water. Let's actually talk about a Jailbreak-like game that actually has stood the test of time, which is the Wild West. Now, you're probably thinking, what the hell, the Wild West, that's a Jailbreak-like? Are you kidding me? There's no way! But I mean, like, come on, look at the gameplay loop here. You can either go out and hunt bounties and get money that way, or you can be a criminal and rob locations and get money that way and get better horses, which are essentially vehicles in this game. It's a Jailbreak-like. Come on, there's no denying it. It has basically the same gameplay formula. Admittedly, I don't have that much experience with the Wild West, but what I can say is that the game feels great to play. It doesn't really operate under classic Roblox physics, but moving your character around and riding a horse around does feel very good. A lot of time was put into the development of, like, the actual movement and character controller, which I really can appreciate. It honestly kind of feels reminiscent to Wanted of all things, because like that game, it very much feels like they wanted to replicate the character controller of the Rage engine, which is the engine Rockstar Games used for their games like GTA 4 and 5 and the Red Dead Redemption games. Hell, in the Wild West, you do kind of have that ragdoll system. While it's not as robust as like GTA 4 or 5, there is still kind of that ragdoll-y feel to it. Your character, and by extension your horse, has actual weight to it, and you can really feel that in the game, and it's really cool. And I just gotta say, the map and the world design in the Wild West is kind of crazy, because unlike Jailbreak, where that map should feel pretty big and sizable, it just doesn't, because the amount of OP absurd vehicles in that game While here, realistically, it should feel pretty slow, and it does, and it benefits because of that. And when you actually look at the full map, I'd say that it probably has a relatively similar size to Jailbreak, but here they actually use that size to the fullest. Everything looks grand, and it feels grand, and it's great. And like I said, I'm not really that much of a Wild West player. I'm not really that knowledgeable of what the game offers, but skimming through the wiki, it actually seems like the game is pretty meaty with what it has to offer, whether it be things that you actually have to do, or combat. It seems actually fairly cool. I might have to check this out and divert most of my time into this. The fact that the wiki has its own dedicated combat page that's meant to teach players how to properly use the game's combat, and there's several other pages dedicated to other things you can do in the game, whether it be hunting or mining or whatnot. It seems like the Wild West is a pretty beefy game, and I heavily respect players that actually do sink their time into the game because it seems and feels like a very good game to play, and I will definitely be playing it sometime soon. One more thing I would like to note about the Wild West is that it has a surprising amount of creative synergy with Red Dead Redemption, which most of you are probably thinking, yeah, duh, it's most likely inspired by Red Dead Redemption, but multiple sources say that they weren't inspired by Red Dead Redemption at all. Rather, they were inspired by old 2010 to 2012 Wild West Roblox games. But if that's so, that's cool, but honestly, a lot of people, including me, are probably gonna call bullshit on that because I think it's very much apparent that they wanted to make Jailbreak's Red Dead Redemption. Because like I said before, a lot of people like to associate and compare Jailbreak to the GTA game, so it is natural to assume that these developers saw that and were like, hey, GTA has Red Dead Redemption, which is essentially the same kind of game, just set in the Wild West kind of setting. Why don't we do the same thing for Jailbreak? And I guess Wild West was just born from that idea. I mean, like, come on, for most of the gameplay of Wild West, you're riding a horse, and what do you do for most of the time in Red Dead Redemption? You ride a horse. They are the same game. It's confirmed. I'm a genius. Jokes aside, as someone who's only dipped my toes slightly into the Wild West, I do heavily respect it. And I am really happy to see that the game is still continuing its momentum that it's had for a while now. It's not like Wanted or Prison Showdown, where those games had a big spurt of popularity during its launch, but they were quickly forgotten about. And it's not like Mad City, where the game has been slowly dwindling away, where it's just bleeding out on player count. It's just kind of living its own life and making its way throughout the Roblox platform, and I am really happy for the developers for that. Highly recommend the Wild West, go play it if you haven't. And I guess one other thing to note is that there is kind of another Wild West-like game, which is by extension a Jailbreak-like game, which is Westbound, which seems like a vastly inferior version of the Wild West. It seems like, to me, it's the Wild West's Mad City, which, if that's the case, I'm not going to touch Westbound. So I guess let's move on to the next Jailbreak-like game, which is going to be another one where you're like, why is this on the list? It should not be on here. It's barely even the same genre. And to an extent, you're right, and that's why we're talking about Vehicle Simulator. Now this time, you're probably thinking, what the fuck, Metal Sentry, why is a vehicle game on the list right here? What the fuck are you talking about? Why is it here? Explain yourself. Now hold on, back it up a bit, back up. There are multiple reasons as to why this game is on this list. First of all, there is literally a jailbreak game mode in this game. It is optional, but it's still there, so technically it counts. It counts, so I'm right, you're wrong. But jokes aside, Vehicle Simulator, at least in the present day, is a very, very dead game. Mostly due to the fact that, one, there are just many other better car games on the Roblox platform nowadays. And two, there are many controversies surrounding SimBuilder, the developer of the game. Let's just not get into that, I would rather not. So Vehicle Simulator as a game is kind of just what you expect the game to be from the title. It's a game where you just drive around cars, you make money, get better cars, make more money, get even better cars, and so on and so forth. It's not really much in the gameplay, you're just driving cars. And honestly, I feel like this game kind of had an influence for how Jailbreak is now, because Jailbreak now is very kind of way too car-centric in my opinion. And especially during Jailbreak's launch, Vehicle Simulator and Jailbreak surprisingly had a bit of competition with each other, because I assume because Jailbreak just had a better vehicle chassis and Vehicle Simulator was like the best vehicle-centric game there was on the Roblox platform at the time, they had some competition, and even the developers constantly poked fun at each other in every turn. And while yes, Vehicle Simulator isn't necessarily a Jailbreak-like game, there is a lot of Vehicle Simulator DNA in Jailbreak nowadays that wouldn't be there without Vehicle Simulator, so I felt like it was worth a mention at least. And as for Vehicle Simulator as a game itself, I feel like this is just one of those Roblox games that has aged really badly. Because for one, the vehicle chassis itself is really janky. There is no proper feeling of suspension within the vehicles, so it kind of just feels like you're just driving around a 10-ton brick around the map, and it doesn't really feel that good to drive around. And this is just a really big nitpick of mine, but if your vehicle's hitbox ever so slightly touches something, it'll play a sound effect that makes it feel like you're in a 90-mile-an-hour accident, and it really gets annoying. And when I say something, I mean anything, and that includes the road. So if your car is lowered enough and it touches the road, it'll play that sound effect, and it's just really janky and weird. And strangely enough, this game has quite a bit of sim racer DNA in it. I know the game is called Vehicle Simulator, but come on, the game wants you to feel like you're playing an arcade racer, and strange enough, there's some sim racer stuff here. Because even when you're going at like a moderate medium speed, your car's steering will not turn for shit. That's an issue that I've experienced with most of the cars that I have, and it's just really annoying. And I do get that it's trying to give you the feeling of proper acceleration in physics, but in this type of game, I really don't think it fits, especially to this kind of degree. Yeah, you can tell from how I'm describing it and from what you're seeing that Vehicle Simulator is a very janky game. And that's probably because this game was initially created in like 2014, but even then, I feel like this game would dearly benefit from a complete overhaul. But what about that Jailbreak-like gameplay that I was talking about before? Well, I gotta say, it's pretty bad. To start, let's go over the main enemies of Vehicle Simulator, which are the AI police cars. You can aggro them via going really fast through a speed trap, or by bumping into an AI police car. And once they're on your tail, it's honestly pretty easy to get away from them, and their AI is pretty dumb. This is very much trying to capture that gameplay from the Need for Speed games, you know, cops versus racers, but I think it just fails in every regard. The most I can compare it to is like the cops from Need for Speed 2015, where those cops are incredibly easy to get away from, and they're not even a challenge, and I feel like even then, that's kind of an insult to Need for Speed 2015, because these cops in Vehicle Simulator just don't do anything. Though there is a police team to the game, I'm not even sure they interact with criminals that much, so I don't know what to say about that. But by some miracle, if you do get arrested, you are sent to the prison, which is honestly just pretty easy to escape, and there's not really much danger after that. This whole Jailbreak-like gameplay added to Vehicle Simulator seems very tacked on and was just made to capitalize off of Jailbreak success, which I don't entirely like, but I thought it was worth mentioning because it is a Jailbreak-like game, and it does have some history with Jailbreak itself, so I thought it was worth mentioning. And Vehicle Simulator as a game, overall, I don't think is worth your time, because throughout my years of playing Vehicle Simulator, it's just kind of gotten worse and worse as time progresses, because oh my god, the catalog of racing games on Roblox has grown and gotten better exponentially, so I think you can just skip out on this one. I guess one last thing that I do want to note is that I see a lot of potential in the idea of fighting AI police officers in a jailbreak-like game, because I've said numerous times before that I really do not like cop gameplay. I find no value in its gameplay, and I think its gameplay is inherently toxic, and because of that, I just think Jailbreak would be a better game if that gameplay was removed, but of course the developers don't want to do that because they do want to keep that sense of cops versus criminals conflict. But I think the idea of criminals fighting AI police rather than actual players does have some potential. I mean, Mad City has that in the game now, but their NPCs are ass, and Jailbreak's NPCs are also ass. They just need to make sure to make AI NPCs fun to fight. And while Jailbreak and Mad City and Vehicle Simulator don't have the smartest or best integrated AI enemies, there are so many examples of games getting those things right to the point where I just think it's possible for these games to do them right. And that's what a lot of these games have. A lot of cool, neat, good ideas on paper, but in execution, they kind of fall flat on their face. Like Mad City has boss fights which on paper sound cool for a game like that, but in execution, the boss fights are terrible. Prison Showdown's entire gameplay idea is based off of a pointless gimmick, and Vehicle Simulator has its very tacked-on Jailbreak-like gameplay to it. But once we go into these last few games, you're gonna start to see that their gimmick is just being Jailbreak, because look at this. Take in all the sights, smell the cacti. Welcome to XCrim. If you were a Jailbreak player from the years of like 2019 to 2020, you've probably heard of XCrim once or twice in your life, because this game is quite infamous. Because you look at the game for like 1 nanosecond and you're like, this is just Jailbreak. This looks exactly like Jailbreak. What is this game? What am I looking at? Well, what you're looking at exactly is Jailbreak if it was made by a 5th grader, because XCrim is a very special case in my opinion. Because what this is basically just more Jailbreak. This is just Jailbreak just kind of expanded and evolved upon. And when I say that this is Jailbreak just expanded and evolved upon, I mean that quite literally, because once you actually play the game and get a feel for it, and you drive the cars, you shoot the weapons, and you do the robberies, you start to realize that, oh, it really feels like Jailbreak. And not in a Mad City way, where that game has a lot of the same design elements and gameplay styles to it. Like, it feels way too much like Jailbreak, to the point where you start to theorize that they just took Jailbreak's code. Normally, I wouldn't mention a game like this on my channel. I would just pass it off as something that was unethically made by a bunch of shitty people, but to be honest, this game is very, very fascinating. If you really want to learn more about these games and what went down with them, I do recommend Creekcraft's videos on these games, because yes, there are multiple, and he really goes in depth as to why the development of these games just went to shit and why the games themselves aren't really that valuable. I mean, he literally shows tangible proof of XCrim having the exact same gameplay framework as Jailbreak, so I do recommend his videos if you're curious enough. But let's actually talk about XCrim as its own game, and if we're just judging it and looking at it based off of just being a fun video game for you to play, holy hell, these do not hold up compared to Jailbreak. These just don't work whatsoever. It just seems like in the process of stealing Jailbreak's framework, they just didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to tune cars properly. They didn't know how to develop the game even further, so they're just kind of left with this, which barely is functional. So yeah, as a video game, don't even touch these. These are not worth your time if you're ever gonna see these and play them. But what I wanted to discuss about XCrim and the games that are like XCrim XCrim is just the weirdness about it. Why is XCrim the way it is? Why does XCrim weirdly have a culture around it that still is surviving to this day? Because there's always been this strange aura around this game and the way people judge it, because people are always talking about, oh, XCrim legit copied Jailbreak, oh, they stole so much, oh, it's literally just a Jailbreak copy, this and that about being a Jailbreak copy. Do you notice something? Do you notice how vapid these responses are to XCrim? And I think a lot of the people that are saying these kinds of things misunderstand XCrim as a concept. Yes, the things people say about the developers ripping Jailbreak's code is valid, but what I don't really think is valid is the vapid arguments that people say about XCrim out of the sheer misunderstanding of what XCrim is. Because these critiques would be valid if the developers were trying to make something original, which they aren't. The entire intent behind XCrim and games like XCrim is that they just want more Jailbreak. The developers of these games never had the intention of making something of their own. If they were, they would have done that, which XCrim and games like XCrim are not that. So judging XCrim and games like XCrim as like, oh, they just copied Jailbreak, really just misunderstands these games, because that's the entire point. These kinds of games are pretty much just conduits for whatever the developers want Jailbreak to add, but they can't do that, so they just add it to this other game that is very much just a Jailbreak clone. You see this in things like having more than just the cops and criminals team, like having the military team and the firefighter team, which were actually heavily requested features to be added to Jailbreak, but they just weren't, but they were added to this game because they were such highly requested features. And you also see this in the sheer amount of different kinds of vehicles in this game. Boy howdy, there are tons and tons of vehicles in these games. Cars for which a lot of people would really like to see in Jailbreak. Like, I'm sure a lot of people would be really happy seeing a Skyline R34 in Jailbreak. Same thing goes with wide body variants of different kinds of vehicles, and some vehicles that would be added to Jailbreak but just weren't yet, so they were in this game first. A wide variety of helicopters and jets in the game. These games were very robust for their vehicle roster. And it's got me thinking, since a lot of these vehicles are very intrinsically related to car culture, things like this probably led to community creations in Jailbreak. And not to mention, if I'm not mistaken, Rally Subi did have a hand in helping create some of the vehicle models for these games. How about that? That's kinda cool, ain't it? One of the most infamous Jailbreak things ever ended up creating a domino effect that led to one of Bedimo's greatest decisions with the game. It's also kind of strange how XCrim did have its own live event at the end of 2019, which from videos I can tell that it's pretty bad. And after that point, like after 2019, XCrim and games like XCrim basically fizzled out of existence. Nobody remembers these games, and probably no one should remember these games. I guess it's kind of like Wanted, where it's very fascinating to think about and has a special place in my heart because it did add quite a bit of things that I would like to see in actual Jailbreak. I guess I should also talk about the Outlaw, which is just XCrim again, so there's not much to talk about. It just kind of did the same things as it. And nowadays, XCrim is completely lost media. Like, there is no version of the game that's, like, at all functional that you can play on Roblox right now. But who knows? Maybe that's how the game always was back then. Maybe it was always that buggy and unplayable and shit. And that's pretty much all of the Jailbreak-likes that I have for this list. An entire catalog of games that range from pretty alright games that don't really have that much of a following to complete pieces of dog shit. If you are at all curious in the very niche games that I mentioned in this video, I do recommend giving them a spin once or twice, but if you just kind of don't want to waste your time on games that aren't really that functional or at all good, you can skip out on some of these. I'd say the only games that I actually like on this list are like Mad City Chapter 2, The Wild West, and Wanted. The rest I think you can skip out on because I don't think they hold that much value, so only look at them if you're really curious. However, that does not mean I don't have some honorable mentions because I do want to mention a few others. Yeah, now we're talking back to basics. And no, this is not Prison Life, this is Prison Life version 3. Pretty much just an updated version of Prison Life that adds quite a bit of jailbreak-like elements, like robberies. Won't you look at that? That's kind of neat. A version of Prison Life that took some influence from its own successor. That's pretty cool in my opinion. And I guess one other last-minute mention is not a Roblox game, but yeah, it's GTA 4. You thought I was gonna say 5. No. We're talking about GTA 4, Cops and Crooks. I'm not entirely sure if you can play it to this day because Xbox Live and PS3 servers have completely shut down, and I'm not even sure like PC online mode works at all, but I would recommend going back and watching some of the Achievement Hunter gameplays of GTA 4 Cops and Crooks because it's just a bunch of dudes having fun in GTA 4, and that's just something I live for. It is some of the funniest YouTube content out there. And in terms of gameplay, it's barely even like Jailbreak. The only Jailbreak-like thing in it is cops versus criminals, but the gameplay is round-based and it's very different, but it's honestly something that I would recommend Bedimo taking some notes of, specifically in terms of crew battles. But other than all of those, I can't really think of any other Jailbreak-likes that are really prominent on the Roblox platform, other than ones that are currently in development. I know that there's that Locked Up game that when it actually released in beta, it was so horrible the developers had to release an entire apology on Twitter because of it. And there's another one called Heist, which is particularly interesting because prominent Roblox Jailbreak YouTuber SuperRL96 is the lead director of, which is gonna be very interesting to see. I've especially had my eye on it because they're currently working on a story mode for the game, which if you know me well enough, you know that I love me some single-player story campaigns in my games, so I cannot wait for it. But other than all of that, there aren't really that many things for me to say in this video, so go out there, check out these really cool games, and just do me a favor and don't touch Mad City Chapter 1, please.